August 1st, 1944, near Avranches, France. Dawn hangs low over the hedgerows, a pale gray mist clinging to the narrow Norman roads. Engines rumble in the half-light, tanks, half-tracks, fuel trucks nose to tail, stretching farther than any one man can see. A captain in the U.S. Third Army glances at his watch, then at the road ahead. They are already late, and George S. Patton does not tolerate late. Somewhere forward, riding in a command car dusted white from days of constant movement, Lieutenant General George Smith Patton, Jr. stands upright, pearl-handled revolvers at his hips, eyes fixed east. He has waited his entire life for this moment. Open country, broken enemy lines, and permission to move fast. Now that he has it, nothing will slow him down. The breakout from Normandy has finally come. Operation Cobra has shattered the German front west of St. Lo, and Patton, newly activated as commander of the Third Army, is unleashed. What follows is not a conventional advance. It is a flood. American armored columns pour through Avranches and fan out across Brittany and central France. Units are ordered not to wait for their flanks, not to pause for consolidation. "Don't hold what you take," Patton tells his commanders. "Take what you can." For the men on the ground, it feels like controlled chaos. Convoys drive day and night, headlights blacked out, guided by painted stones and exhausted military police waving them through crossroads. Shermans grind forward until their engines overheat. Infantry sleep sitting upright on truck beds, rifles across their laps. Maps become obsolete within hours. And across the lines in German headquarters from Paris to Metz, a different kind of panic is setting in. At Oberkommando der Wehrmacht intelligence sections, situation maps are updated again and again, and again. Red pins marking American units refuse to stay still. Reports arrive describing U.S. armor in towns German commanders believed were days away from contact. Communications officers struggle to answer a simple question: where is the front? There is no answer. Patton's obsession with speed is already legendary among the Allies. But to German intelligence, it is something worse. Incomprehensible. Wehrmacht doctrine is built around defined lines, phased withdrawals, deliberate counterattacks. Even in retreat, there is supposed to be order. Patton offers none. A German intelligence officer in Army Group B notes in a situation report that American forces under Patton do not pause after contact and appear to advance without regard for exposed flanks. Another report warns that Third Army units change direction with alarming frequency, making prediction nearly impossible. This is not how wars are supposed to be fought. On August 5th, Patton's forces take Vannes. 2 days later, they are at Lorient. Simultaneously, other columns are racing east toward Le Mans. German analysts struggle to determine Patton's objective. Is he driving for the Atlantic ports? Is he turning toward Paris? Is this a feint? Patton himself encourages the confusion. Orders are deliberately vague. Axes of advance shift mid-march. A corps that appears to be heading north suddenly turns east. Reconnaissance units are told to push until fired upon, then push some more. For the German field commanders, the effect is paralyzing. Reserves cannot be positioned because no one knows where they will be needed. Units sent to block one road discover American armor already crossing another, 20 miles away. By mid-August, intercepted German messages reveal a growing fear, not of American numbers but of Patton himself. His name appears repeatedly in intelligence summaries. Patton Army becomes shorthand for sudden disaster. Even when Patton runs into resistance, he does not stop. He flows around it. Strong points are bypassed, left for follow-on infantry. German units that expect a pause to reorganize instead find their supply lines cut, their headquarters overrun, their retreat routes blocked by tanks that seem to appear from nowhere. A German major captured near Angers later tells his interrogators that Patton's forces moved like cavalry in the old wars, striking deep before defenses could form. "We could not tell where to stand," he says. "Everywhere was threatened." Inside 3rd Army headquarters, the tempo is relentless. Staff officers work with grease pencils and stopwatch timing. Fuel consumption is calculated down to the gallon. Not to limit movement, but to stretch it just far enough for one more push. Patton personally demands daily situation updates, not to slow the advance, but to accelerate it. Speed, he tells his officers, is the first, second, and third rule. For German intelligence, this is terrifying. Their models, their assumptions, their experience from Poland, France, Russia, none of it applies. This is not blitzkrieg. It is something looser, faster, and harder to grasp. And as August wears on, one truth becomes unavoidable in German headquarters. As long as Patton keeps moving, there will be no stable front in the West. The war is slipping out of their hands, not because of one decisive battle, but because one general refuses to slow down. August 13th, 1944. Le Mans, France. The city falls almost by accident. German rearguards expect the Americans to pause after crossing the Sarthe River. Instead, Patton's armored spearheads punch straight through, engines roaring, turrets scanning for threats that never fully materialize. By nightfall, Le Mans, once a key German logistics hub, is firmly in American hands. Inside a captured German headquarters building, maps lie scattered across tables, pins half pulled from corkboards. Orders written only hours earlier are already meaningless. For German intelligence officers trying to track Patton, this is becoming a nightmare. At Army Group B headquarters, staff officers gather around situation maps that now resemble abstract art more than military planning. Front lines drawn in pencil are erased and redrawn so often the paper begins to tear. Reports arrive late, incomplete, contradictory. One unit reports American armor 20 kilometers south. Another claims they've already passed to the east. Reconnaissance flights spot dust columns that vanish by the time coordinates are transmitted. A senior intelligence officer mutters a phrase that begins to circulate through German command posts. There is no front, only Patton. This is not hyperbole. Patton's Third Army is no longer advancing as a single mass. It has fractured into fast-moving columns, armored task forces, reinforced with infantry, engineers, artillery, and just enough supply to keep going. Each force operates semi-independently, exploiting gaps before higher headquarters can even react. For German doctrine, built on clear boundaries between armies and corps, this is devastating. Field Marshal Gunther von Klug demands clarity. Where exactly is Patton heading? Toward Paris, toward the Seine, toward Germany itself? The answer keeps changing, sometimes by the hour. On August 15th, intercepted communications suggest Third Army is pivoting east. German planners scramble to shift reserves. But even as units move, new reports arrive. American columns have turned south again, threatening German forces still retreating from Brittany. The German problem is not just speed. It is Patton's refusal to behave predictably. Most commanders pause after success. They consolidate, reorganize, allow logistics to catch up. Patton does the opposite. Success is a signal to accelerate. Captured German officers later describe how American units seem to appear behind them without warning. One colonel recalls ordering a withdrawal only to discover the road already blocked by Shermans that had driven all night, bypassing villages, ignoring their own exhaustion. At German intelligence desks, analysts attempt to impose logic on the chaos. They study Patton's previous campaigns, North Africa, Sicily, searching for patterns. They note his love of envelopment, his disdain for static defense. But even that knowledge offers little comfort. Patton's unpredictability is intentional. At Third Army headquarters, Patton encourages constant movement not only to seize ground, but to break the enemy's ability to think. His staff is instructed to keep German forces reacting, not planning. Orders emphasize momentum over perfection. Fuel shortages loom constantly. Trucks run dry on roadsides. Ammunition runs low. but Patton pushes anyway, calculating that the enemy is suffering even more. German intelligence begins to agree. Reports from frontline units describe morale collapsing. Soldiers complain they never know where the Americans will strike next. Defensive positions are abandoned before being tested, simply to avoid encirclement. Officers hesitate, knowing that delay may be fatal. A German intelligence summary dated August 18th notes that Patton's forces advance with such rapidity that organized resistance becomes impossible. Another warns that any pause in movement results in immediate American exploitation. This is the core of Patton's terror. Not his firepower, not his tanks, but his tempo. Meanwhile, Patton himself remains dissatisfied. Standing over maps stained with dust and coffee, he demands more speed. He berates commanders who stop to rest. He personally drives forward to observe roads, bridges, and traffic jams, sometimes directing movement himself. To his staff, he repeats a mantra: "We are winning because the enemy is confused. The moment he understands us, we slow down." And so they do not slow down. By late August, Patton's columns are racing toward the Seine and beyond. German attempts to establish defensive lines dissolve before they are complete. Every plan assumes time, and Patton denies them that currency entirely. In Berlin, intelligence summaries grow increasingly grim. Patton's name appears alongside words like uncontainable, unpredictable, dangerous. He is no longer just a field commander. He is a force that defies analysis. One German intelligence officer reportedly remarks that fighting Patton feels like trying to nail water to the wall. And as the summer of 1944 draws to a close, one realization spreads through German headquarters from France to the Reich itself. If Patton is not stopped soon, there may never be another chance to stop him at all. August 25, 1944. Somewhere east of the Seine, rain falls in cold sheets, turning French roads into slick ribbons of mud and oil. A German signals truck sits hidden beneath trees, its antenna swaying slightly in the wind. Inside, an exhausted intelligence officer listens to fragments of radio traffic, unit call signs that no longer correspond to any coherent map. He lowers his headset slowly. Nothing makes sense. Patton's Third Army has crossed the Seine faster than anyone believed possible. German intelligence estimates had predicted at least a week of regrouping, bridge repairs, and logistical pause. Instead, American armored columns are already pouring east, spreading across a front that no longer exists in any meaningful sense. At Army Group G headquarters, situation briefings become exercises in controlled despair. Reports arrive describing U.S. forces in Troyes, then Chaumont, then approaching the Moselle. Each update contradicts the last, not because they are wrong, but because Patton's units are everywhere at once. German intelligence attempts to impose structure. Analysts draw concentric threat rings, project likely objectives, calculate fuel endurance. The numbers say Patton must stop soon. His supply lines are stretched impossibly thin. His flanks are exposed. His units are exhausted. But reality refuses to comply. Patton's method is now fully apparent. He accepts risk to create paralysis. He knows German commanders cannot exploit his vulnerabilities because they cannot even locate them in time. Captured German documents from this period reveal growing frustration. One report warns that Patton's forces advance without regard to classical operational limits. Another notes that American columns continue movement despite conditions under which a rational enemy would pause. To German intelligence, this is madness, but it works. In late August, German planners attempt to establish a defensive line along the Moselle River. Orders are issued, units are assigned, artillery positions are selected, and then Patton's forward elements arrive before the plan is complete. At Metz, German commanders prepare for a deliberate defense. Ancient forts, concrete, strong terrain. Intelligence estimates suggest Patton will need weeks to assemble the forces required. Instead, Probing attacks begin almost immediately. American units test crossings, threaten flanks, force German commanders to react before they are ready. Every time German intelligence believes it has identified Patton's main effort, he shifts again. Third Army Corps rotate axes of advance without warning. Armored divisions detach battalions to exploit minor gaps. Recon units drive until fired upon, then radio back new routes. Patton himself encourages initiative at the lowest levels, trusting speed more than centralized control. This decentralization terrifies German intelligence. There is no single headquarters to target, no decisive moment to anticipate. Patton has turned the battlefield into a constantly moving problem. A captured German intelligence officer later describes it bluntly. "We could not fight an army that never stood still long enough to be hit." Meanwhile, Patton remains obsessed with momentum. In his diary, he writes of frustration at supply constraints, not because they limit comfort, but because they limit speed. Fuel becomes the most valuable commodity in France. Patton pressures higher command relentlessly, arguing that every gallon denied to Third Army gives the enemy time to think. German intelligence notices this too. Reports begin referencing American fuel convoys as critical targets. But even when interdicted, Patton's tempo only briefly falters. In September 1944, German analysts begin to warn that Patton's advance threatens not just tactical defeat, but operational collapse. If he reaches the German border before winter, the implications are dire. One particularly stark intelligence summary concludes, "The enemy commander Patton seeks not territory, but the destruction of our ability to command." This is the realization, the turning point. Patton's obsession with speed is not reckless impatience. It is a calculated weapon aimed directly at German decision-making. Every mile gained is less important than every hour denied. As autumn approaches, German intelligence clings to one hope, that logistics, weather, or allied politics will finally slow Patton down. They wait for the pause that must come. But Patton is already thinking about the next move. He knows the Germans are watching him. He knows they are trying to predict him. And so he prepares to do what has terrified them all summer long, change direction again. September 6, 1944, near the Moselle River, eastern France. Morning fog hangs low over the riverbanks as American engineers work in near silence, guiding pontoon sections into place. German artillery fires sporadically from the far bank, shells whining overhead, splashing into the water with hollow thuds. To any conventional observer, this looks like the beginning of a slow, deliberate river assault. German intelligence believes this too. Intercepted radio traffic suggests Patton's forces have finally outrun their supply lines. Fuel shortages are severe. Ammunition is rationed. Reports indicate that Third Army is forced to pause and reorganize. For the first time since Normandy, German planners dare to hope that Patton has reached his limit. They are wrong. While German intelligence focuses on the Moselle crossings, Patton is already shifting weight elsewhere. He orders feints along the river, noisy, visible preparations meant to draw attention, while mobile elements probe for alternate routes and weak points. His goal is not the river itself, but the enemy's reaction to it. Inside Third Army headquarters, maps are crowded with arrows pointing in contradictory directions. Patton encourages it. Confusion at home, he believes, creates chaos for the enemy. German intelligence reports struggle to keep up. One summary notes increased American activity near Nancy. Another warns of possible thrusts north toward Luxembourg. Analysts argue over which represents Patton's main effort. Patton exploits the delay mercilessly. On September 11th, American units force crossings at multiple points almost simultaneously. German defenses, spread thin and uncertain of the true threat, respond too late. Within days, Third Army has established bridgeheads that threaten to unravel the entire German position in Lorraine. The expected pause never happens. Instead of consolidating the crossings, Patton pushes armor through them immediately. expanding the bridgeheads faster than German artillery can adjust. Units that should be resting are ordered forward. Engineers repair bridges under fire. Supply trucks risk shelling to keep fuel moving. German intelligence begins to fracture under the pressure. Reports grow increasingly speculative. Words like possibly, suspected, and unconfirmed dominate summaries. Commanders are forced to make decisions with incomplete information, and Patton thrives in exactly that environment. A German corps commander later admits that he never knew whether Patton was attacking or maneuvering. By the time we understood, he says, it was already too late. Patton's unpredictability reaches a peak during this period. He launches attacks that appear reckless, only to abandon them abruptly and strike elsewhere. He advances aggressively in one sector, then halts without explanation, only to surge forward in another. German intelligence cannot determine whether these movements reflect American weakness or overwhelming strength. The ambiguity is paralyzing. Inside German headquarters, frustration turns to fear. Analysts recognize that Patton is shaping their decisions without firing a shot. Every false signal forces a redeployment. Every delayed response creates another opening. The concept of a stable defensive line, the foundation of German operational planning, is effectively dead. Patton understands this intuitively. In conversations with his staff, he emphasizes movement over battle. A moving enemy, he says, is harder to hit than a stationary one, but a moving me is impossible to predict. By late September, German intelligence assessments begin to focus less on Patton's location and more on his intent, but intent proves even harder to pin down. One intercepted German report summarizes the problem with chilling clarity. Patton does not appear to pursue a single objective. His objective is movement itself. As autumn deepens, rain and mud begin to slow all armies. German intelligence hopes weather will finally impose the pause Patton refuses to accept. But even as conditions worsen, Third Army continues to press, probing, testing, advancing whenever possible. Patton is not trying to break through everywhere. He is trying to ensure the enemy never knows where the breakthrough will come. And as the front stabilizes only briefly along the German border, German intelligence officers realize something profoundly unsettling. They are no longer reacting to American moves. They are reacting to Patton's personality. October 10, 1944. A farmhouse command post near Nancy, France. Wind rattles the shutters as rain drums against the roof. Inside, cigarette smoke hangs thick over a table cluttered with maps, coffee cups, and grease pencils worn down to nubs. Patton stands at the center, helmet off, jaw tight, studying the terrain east of the Moselle. Across the lines, German intelligence officers are doing the same, and failing. By October, Patton's advance has slowed, but not in the way German planners expect. The tempo is uneven now, bursts of speed followed by sudden lulls, and that unpredictability only deepens the uncertainty. German intelligence reports attempt to diagnose the change. Some conclude Patton is exhausted. Others warn he is preparing something larger. Both are wrong, and both are right. Patton's obsession with speed has evolved. It is no longer just about distance covered, but about timing. About striking precisely when the enemy believes movement is impossible. German intelligence attempts psychological profiling. Analysts study Patton's speeches, his diary entries gleaned from captured documents, his flamboyant reputation. They label him impulsive, aggressive, egotistical. And yet, the battlefield tells a different story. Patton's movements are not random. They are reactive in ways German command cannot track. He shifts direction not on fixed schedules, but in response to opportunity. A thinly held sector, a delayed enemy unit, a bridge left undefended for just a few hours. This flexibility terrifies German intelligence because it cannot be countered with doctrine. In mid-October, German planners believe they have identified Patton's next major effort, a push toward Saarbrücken. Units are repositioned. Artillery is massed. Defensive plans are drawn. Patton never comes. Instead, Third Army launches limited attacks elsewhere, forcing German commanders to commit reserves prematurely. When those reserves are engaged, Patton abruptly renews pressure near Saarbrücken, not with a single massive blow, but with coordinated thrusts that stretch German response beyond its limits. German intelligence officers begin to realize they are chasing shadows. A senior analyst notes in frustration that Patton appears to operate inside our decision cycle. Orders based on yesterday's information arrive too late. Plans designed for static defense collapse against fluid movement. This is the essence of Patton's terror. He denies the enemy the luxury of deliberation. Even when Patton is forced to pause due to fuel shortages or weather, German intelligence cannot trust the pause. Every lull could be deception. Every silence could precede a sudden surge. As a result, German commanders hesitate to exploit opportunities. They fear overextension. They fear ambush. They fear Patton. Captured German officers later described this period as mentally exhausting. One intelligence captain recalls sleeping in 2-hour intervals, constantly updating maps that were already outdated. "We were not fighting an army," he says. "We were fighting uncertainty." Patton understands this fatigue. He counts on it. His orders emphasize constant pressure, reconnaissance patrols, artillery harassment, limited attacks, anything to deny the enemy rest. Speed, in Patton's mind, is not measured only in miles per day. It is measured in how fast the enemy can think. As October drags on, German intelligence grows desperate for clarity. They search for signs of a decisive offensive, a grand pattern they can finally anticipate. None appears. Instead, Patton remains what he has been all along, moving, probing, adjusting. And while German intelligence struggles to understand him, Patton is already looking north. He does not know exactly when the next crisis will come, but he knows this. When it does, speed will decide everything. December 16, 1944, Third Army Headquarters, Nancy, France. The morning begins like many others, cold, gray, and tense. A staff officer enters Patton's command post with a stack of overnight reports, his expression tight. German forces have launched a massive offensive in the Ardennes. The quiet sector to the north has exploded. Inside German intelligence headquarters, the mood is cautiously confident. For weeks, analysts have believed Patton's Third Army is exhausted, slowed by weather, fuel shortages, and extended lines. The German plan for the Ardennes depends on that assumption. If Patton remains fixed in the south, the northern thrust might succeed. But Patton has already anticipated this moment. Days earlier, he had asked his staff a question that stunned them. If the Germans attack, how fast can we turn north? Not if they attack. When? Now. The answer matters. Patton slams his hand on the map table and issues orders that ripple through Third Army like an electric current. Entire corps are to pivot 90 degrees and drive north toward Bastogne. Not in a week. Not in 5 days. In 72 hours. German intelligence does not believe the reports when they arrive. Intercepted radio traffic suggests large-scale American movement, but the direction is wrong. Analysts assume it is deception or misinterpretation. No army can disengage, reorient, and redeploy that quickly in winter conditions. Patton does it anyway. Convoys grind through snow and ice, engines straining in sub-zero temperatures. Tanks crawl along narrow roads clogged with refugees and retreating units. Drivers navigate by compass and memory when road signs are missing or destroyed. The movement is chaotic, but it is fast. German intelligence officers scramble to update their maps. Units once facing Patton south of the Moselle are now reported north of Luxembourg. Commanders demand confirmation. There is none to give. A German intelligence summary from this period admits with alarm that Patton has redeployed faster than anticipated by all estimates. Another warns that American forces are appearing in sectors believed secure. At Bastogne, surrounded American paratroopers brace for the worst. They do not know Patton is coming, only that the sound of distant artillery grows louder each day. For German intelligence, the realization is devastating. Patton has not only moved faster than expected, he has shattered their final assumption. Even winter, even exhaustion, even chaos cannot slow him enough. When Third Army breaks through to Bastogne on December 26th, the psychological impact is enormous. German intelligence officers recognize the pattern instantly. What Patton did in France, he has now done in the Ardennes. Denying the enemy time, denying them certainty, denying them control. One German officer later writes that Patton's maneuver destroyed our confidence in prediction. Plans were no longer just risky, they were blind. Patton's obsession with speed has reached its purest form. It is no longer about offense or defense, advance or retreat. It is about being faster than the enemy's ability to react, even in crisis. As the Ardennes offensive collapses, German intelligence draws a final bitter conclusion. Patton is not merely a commander who moves quickly. He is a commander who makes speed itself a weapon, one aimed directly at the enemy's mind. And by the winter of 1944, that weapon has done irreparable damage.